Lisa Caskey is a ghostwriter, fiction author, and DJ. She has been the ghost, developmental editor, and book coach behind dozens of books, including several bestsellers. She worked with my dad as the editor on his book. Her most recent work of fiction is Motherboard, the first of a series of cyberpunk novellas. Welcome to Notes from a Ghost, a podcast about stories and the people who tell them. My name is Charlie, and I'm a ghostwriter. I love a good story. I hope you enjoy this one. Lisa, thanks for being here.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So I want to ask you about a lot of what you do when you're not ghostwriting, because I think for a lot of people, the appeal of ghostwriting is the freedom and balance that's possible because we can be quite well paid for what we do. And I find there's like a rhythm and a seasonality to book projects that allows time for other things. And I don't know if there's any ghostwriter who does that balance better than you. You have some really cool stuff going on when you're not ghostwriting. Tell me a little bit about those projects.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I am outside of ghostwriting. I most recently have picked up music production and DJing or mixing. But basically, yeah, I picked that up, I want to say a little over a year ago. It was just always, music has always been something that has been a big part of my life. I was a musical theater major in college. I did musicals all through high school. I was in choir all growing up. Like, I remember singing was my first instrument that I really learned how to play. So it was only natural that I move into music. It seemed to fit within a line, like it was just an alignment for me. So that's basically, I balance my life by doing that on the side. I've been doing music production, like I said, now for a little over a year. And then I also have a horse. So my other extracurricular activity, so to speak, is horseback riding. So which is it's any kind of health and fitness, as you know, as a kayaker. It takes time to train. It just takes time to basically be with the sport. So that's essentially what I do in my free time. When I'm not ghostwriting, I'm either doing things with music production, DJing, or I'm at the barn. So yeah, that's about it though.
Well, in horses, I mean, it's kind of like boats in the sense that when you're done, you're not done. You have to, like, when I live on a beach, so there's no commute to the water, and it's amazing in that regard. But when I land, now I have to clean every piece of gear, get salt water off of everything. And right. So and I would imagine with horses, it's exactly the same. You have to take care of an animal when you're finished riding.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like maintaining any type of piece of equipment, right? Except that it's a living thing. So there's just like an added element there, right? But it's maintenance. It's yes. Like you and your kayak are a unit, which is why equipment matters, because you've got to find the right equipment for you. Same thing with horseback riding. It's like my horse and I are a sport jumping team. We are teammates. So, and I am the one who's responsible for her care. But yeah, she requires maintenance. I mean, she requires, like, we're jumping. So she requires different types of therapies. There's different, she needs certain foods. She needs certain activities. But yeah, when I have to get her ready, right? Like, she doesn't sleep in her saddle. So
sure.
Yeah, it's like I've got to brush her, and I have help for that. There are definitely people at the barn that I work with that help me with this. But yeah, I have to get her ready. We have to brush her, which put her saddle on, which put bridle on, and then I ride. And then at the end of the day, I don't, I'm not hosing off salt water, but I'm hosing off sweat. We're basically like giving her a shower because she's just had a big workout, and cooling her down, and then giving her her feed and giving her her supplements and like all those things. But yes, it's not just going to the gym. Like, really, every time you go, you need to go every day. You've got to feed and take care of your horse every single day. So it's a little bit more intense than the gym. Plus the workouts are, I mean, you're there, if you're doing all that stuff yourself and you're like having a lesson, like a training lesson, I mean, you're at the barn for like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy how that works, the setup time. And it's nice how writing doesn't really have that. Like you can, like, I know it takes a while to get into the zone and to find a flow, but you can pretty much just sit down and start writing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can just sit down and start writing. There isn't, I mean, a lot of people won't do that. A lot of people will procrastinate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they'll come up with, and I'm one of them. That's how I know. I mean,
Oh, me too.
a lot of people will come up with like a bunch of stuff. Oh, I need to clean my house. Look, this is me. This is me. Oh, I know I need to do the dishes. Oh, no, I need to make sure my desk is perfectly set up. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about the laundry and the dryer. Let me go get that real quick. You know what I mean? Like that's me. Like, yes, I can just start, but I don't. I'm
Yeah,
like,
no.
like an hour to get started, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that is absolutely how it goes. I think with nonfiction, there are positive ways to procrastinate. I find like I can do more research. I can organize my notes in a way that will set me up to make the writing a little, because I think sometimes if with nonfiction, if you have writer's block, it's because maybe you don't have what you need to do the writing, and then it's on you to go get that.
Yeah, that's for sure with ghostwriting. Anytime it gets to be a point where it's challenging, like if you're like, I don't really know how to do this, it might be that you're just having a bad day. You know what I mean? It might be that the ghostwriter themselves is just not having a good day, which totally happens. But most of the time, it's because there's something in the copy, in the interview, in the transcription that isn't right. The ghostwriter is usually trying too hard. And that's a point that just comes with experience. It's almost like taking a multiple choice test and knowing to skip over questions that you don't know the answers to immediately.
Yes.
Like that. So you gotta realize that, because otherwise you're gonna spend 2 hours, like you said, doing more research, trying to get to the answer, which in my opinion, actually, most of the time I need to go back to the author. Sometimes I do research for sure. And if it's for me to just like round out an argument and I know that it'll be more sound if I just quickly do a little research and add a research point, fine. But that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about something that's like brain tickling.
Yes.
And that I can't, like, I like nudging, not tickling. Tickling is good. Like, this is like brain, like poking.
Yeah.
I can't even make sense of this. It's not us. 9 times out of 10, it's them, because they're themselves. And this is more with business folks and how to, less with memoir, unless they haven't really sorted through their feelings on a certain scene or situation in their life. Or business books, this happens. It's because the author doesn't really fully understand the concept that they're talking about. They do at a very surface level, which has done well for them in spoken communication, but written communication, because it's so linear, it has to be extremely thorough.
Yes.
And a lot of times I have found in those instances, it's because the author themselves has not rounded out the idea fully. Okay. But I looked at that as part of my job. Them unpack that. Okay. So in those instances, I leave myself a no. I just be like, okay, come back to this. And I just ask the question, like, this isn't working for me. We need to spend more time on this.
Totally.
Yeah. Efficiency, you know?
I find those second round interviews to fill out the second draft like are a gift, because also take the pressure off. Like I don't have to get it right this time. I just need to create the basic first draft.
First draft, you know? I think this is where a lot of people who are receiving deliverables from ghostwriters get hung up. And I think this is where ghostwriters can actually do a better job communicating. Is that this is draft. This is first draft. And when you use that language, it makes there's pressures taken off immediately. This is the first draft. How many people turned in a first draft? I mean, people probably did turn in first drafts in like school and stuff, and learned that wasn't the best way to get the best grade, right? It's like the art is really actually in the editing and in the revisions.
Totally. And some of and this has come up kind of again and again on this podcast, is that, most people have never seen unfinished writing.
That's a good point.
And so I find there's a lot of hand-holding that needs to happen, even just sort of empowering the author to really shred this and don't be polite. Don't tell me how great you think it is. Really like, let's find out how we're going to make it better and what's wrong with it. And yeah, now the part of that, right, is the one thing that I think is really mysterious about what we do to non-writers and I would say even to writers who kind of don't write to deadlines, don't write professionally. And that is, you and I can sit down and draw up a contract with someone and make a legally binding promise to them, essentially, that on a date certain, 4 to 6 months from now, whatever timeline you agree upon, they're going to have their book. How do you do that? Like, get a book done in a systematic, reliable way where that's even possible? Because I think that is just amazing to non-ghostwriters that we do that.
I honestly, though, I try not to pigeonhole myself into an exact date. Okay. So what I do in my contracts is I say that the intended deliverable date is within, and quite frankly, unless somebody's willing to pay me more, I never agree to something like for a full book, a full ghostwriting project, because I do a lot of different stuff. I do developmental editing with books that are for people who've already written their books, similar to what you and your dad did, right? I also do that. That's a totally different timeline. Okay. But to ghostwrite a full book front to end, you got to account for delays on both sides. I say a year, but again, it's not, I actually say it's like a year, but it could go over. Go and put in a clause that it could go over by 6 months. And if it goes past that, well, then we have to renegotiate. Because this is the thing, is that and this is what I found with ghostwriting too, is that you can have these projects, and the projects are amazing, and the projects can encompass a certain amount of time. But then some people revise and revise and revise, or they take a very, very long time. And if they don't get back to me in 6 months with the first revision on their book, it's been 6 months since I've worked on your book. And I work on a lot of books. So for you to basically, I've got to refresh my brain. I got to get back into sync with you and your book, which, I mean, honestly, that is going to take me some time on the back end, right, to pick that back up. So there's got to be compensation associated with that for 2 reasons. One, for me, so that I'm still excited to work on the project, but also 2, for the author, so that the author actually does the work. Otherwise, they're dragging their butt for so long, and things don't get done, and they come back and they expect this amazing book, but they've been gone for 6 months. And there's a disconnect. There's misalignment there. So the expectations on their end are too high for what I could adequately deliver as a ghostwriter, because you took 6 months off. So I build that into my contract. And if they come back, I'll still deliver the book. I'm not going to charge them another 50 grand for the book or whatever, but they're going to be charged a monthly retainer to have me on calls with them. Because I still got to get on the phone. I got to talk to them. I got to revise. I mean, there's a cost for my time and for me to hold space for the project. So to answer your question, a roundabout way, okay, if the author is there and they're able to get the book, if they're able to meet their deadlines and you are able to deliver a chapter a week, you can totally get the book done in 6 months.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was going to say. Let's say all goes well and we kind of are hitting every deadline, and we already budgeted a little bit of delays if someone gets a cold. But yeah, that chapter, I remember a chapter a week. You had mentioned that a long time ago when you and I were talking about ghostwriting and just how it's done. And but even that, I think that, I mean, that's what they hire us for, right? Is that we're able to take the transcript, find the storyline, find the business lesson contained therein, and craft it. And then it isn't really, it's not like you have to wait for lightning to strike inspiration wise. Like, you have what you need to do that chapter.
Totally, yes. And so my favorite cadence, so there's several different ways to do it. You could do all of your interviews and then write the book. So a lot of people like to do that and absorb and then write the whole book in one sitting, and that takes about 6 weeks. Okay, on average. So if you have interviews, 6 weeks and then you're revising. So again, it's about 6 to 9 months, but I like to build my books as I go. Okay. And this allows me to take on more projects. Essentially, if I'm able to build it as I go, that means I don't need to take 6 months off from everything when I'm interviewing to write it. All right. So I like to do, you and I have an interview and then I write the chapter that week. And then I have another interview with you. And then I write that chapter the second week. And I'm giving you deliverables too as I go. So that
I was going to ask, do you then share those?
Absolutely. Because I want you as the author to have accountability over the content. So it's a quick way to check. Also, if we're in line, like, first of all, I always do style and tone checks. Right? Like, we got to make sure we're in line before I write this whole thing, but also like just making sure that the content is what they want. Like, writing chapters, and then by the end, then when we're done, they can't be like, well, I don't like the book at all. I mean, we've been in this process together from chapter by chapter. You're just coming up with this now. It holds them. It just makes them more accountable for the work. It's also more of a protection for me as the business owner, right? Like, it's hard for you to say that you want your money back because you hate your book when every step of the way you've been reviewing chapters and that didn't come up at all.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a really good point. The thing I've found early in the process when I'm pitching a project is people love to hear about the workflow and how we actually work together. And I really like that because it's a safeguard against someone who thinks they're hiring me to write a nonfiction book that they put their name on. Like
exactly. That's the thing. This is not, ghost producing right now. I'm hearing about this. If you're like in the rap game, ghost producing is a thing that's getting like a really bad name because there are these rappers and these musicians that are hiring ghost producers to write their songs for them. And so it's becoming like this whole, like, how dare you type of thing. Yeah.
We were just talking about that. Jordan Ring was on here and we were talking about how like sometimes the conversation will come up where you clarify that like I am a ghostwriter of nonfiction books, memoirs, because there are other types of ghostwriting. And the one that, and he hadn't encountered this, but I was like telling him how on Reddit, half the jobs under ghostwriting are for like hip hop and country seem to be the genres where people ghostwrite heavily.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that those genres are very lyric, very, very lyric driven, maybe.
100%. Yeah. And storyline
driven for sure. Yeah. But like, if you think of it, this is the thing that people like, don't really realize about art is that successful artists are also successful business people. So they have learned how to monetize their art, which isn't that what we want our artists to do? Don't we want our artists to be able to survive off of their art? Well, to do that, you have to commoditize. This is just basic economics. I mean, we need to create something that we can make money off of. That's a commodity, right? So what happens is that you get to be so big like Drake, and your commodity is worth, I mean, Drake is like a $500 million corporation. Think about all of the people who are employed by that corporation. So that corporation has revenue targets that it needs to hit in order to maintain its size. Okay. In order to maintain jobs for all of those people working for the Drake organization. Taylor Swift is the exact same way. She produces and produces and produces and produces and puts album after album after album because she has a business, a corporation, a $billion corporation to maintain, right? So ghost producing, ghost writing, like, I mean, it's the same thing with a major corporation like Coca-Cola hiring copywriters to write all of its copy. These are people who are employed by the Drake Corporation. They are literally hired to write for Drake because do you know what I'm saying? It's like, to me, because I think that it's easy to throw shade. It's like Nepo babies and Nepo siblings and all this stuff. It's easy to throw shade when we're not living our life that we want to live. If people are super happy with the life that they're living, they have no shade to throw. You
It's
know what I mean?
true.
It's like, so anyway, that's just a side note on that. But that's why with ghostwriting, I mean, the people that I work with, I do mostly nonfiction. How
Mhm.
okay, memoir is a close second at this point now, but mostly it's still how to. These are, I'm working with somebody right now. This is a guy. We're working on our third book together. He has a cybersecurity. He has a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity company. He doesn't have the time to write the book himself. So
Right.
he, businessman, is hiring somebody who is very adept to work with him to do that. You know what I mean? It's like it's in my opinion, it's just it's naive and it's juvenile. It's extremely juvenile to not understand the commoditization of
The I love that there's that anecdote of I guess Paul McCartney said that he's like, I used to say, hey John, do you want to write a swimming pool? Like where they would just, if they wanted to purchase something, they would come they would write a new song. And yeah, I think you know the song Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash,
if I heard it, probably
co-authored by Shel Silverstein.
amazing.
Like as that was like a collaboration. That was a like, no secret.
But that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like, so like I was talking to some producers the other day, music wise, and so for me as a DJ, as a producer coming up, you know, there is a steep learning curve. Okay, like I'm such like music production and mixing is highly technical. Like it is extremely technical. You have to be math and science oriented to understand how to work this equipment. I mean, for real, it's hard. And I am coming up as I'm a 42-year-old woman. So I'm definitely still sharp and I've got a lot, like I can still learn. But at the same time, my learning curve is very steep for this stuff. Okay.
Mhm.
So for me to consider working with a ghost producer to help me write songs so that I can kind of start to catch up a little bit, why wouldn't I think about that? Like, am I really going to try to, it's like struggling for the sake of struggling. But that's, again, that's speaking from the perspective of someone who has not created a business out of their art. Okay. I've created a business out of my ghostwriting. You are too. You are creating a business out of your art. Your ghostwriting is an art. We haven't even talked about that. Ghostwriting is an art. We synthesize information. Okay. Most people are radial thinkers. Most people, books are linear. So ghostwriters have to take radial energy and disseminate it and then resynthesize it in a linear fashion. That is art. That is such a crazy art form. You have to also capture style and tone. It has to sound like the person you're interviewing, right? So
You also and there's a human soft skills element, but also like I mean you need to have one of in this day and age one of the rarest skills in existence, which is you have to be like curious and non-judgmental, like because
yeah,
if you can like see my politics when you tell me something,
yeah.
you're gonna stop telling me things if you're not talking to someone who just totally agrees with you.
Such a good point. And that's another thing, you're right, because it requires an open mind,
I
which is art as well, right? You know, open minded and like allowing the ideas to kind of filter through your interpretation of it. So it's every art form. People have visions for painting, like people hear music through, through sound. It's like you're basically a channel for that information and you're putting it out there on paper. But yes, as ghostwriters, we are. At the same time, we wouldn't exist if people didn't pay us to do it.
Yes, because that's the other thing too is it's a really like one uh ghostwriter I know who's based in the UK was saying it's the most stable, or it's the I forget exactly how he put it, but he's like this is how you enter the middle class as a writer,
Yes.
like
Yes.
predictably, reliably, like you make dentist money.
Yes. Well, exactly. That's the thing. It's like, writers, it is so difficult for writers to make money in general. And this is actually an avenue where they can.
Mhm.
Because again, it's because we're making books for either people who have businesses that they need to support. So this is a business expense. It's a marketing expense for them. Okay. So they have the money that's being channeled through their business, funneled through their business, or it's a memoir. It's somebody who is sitting on a chunk of money, and they have a legacy that it's important to them. They don't care about the money. They care about the legacy. So they would rather spend the money and help create a legacy piece, right? But again, these are people that have the money to spend on books. So that's how writers can afford it. It's because there are people that actually have money to spend on it. You know, that's the other thing. It's a double-edged sword, because people get so hung up again on the whole, selling out, and kind of like Drake using ghost producers, selling it, but it's not. It's just supporting a company.
The big thing that I find when people are shocked to learn that, I think it's something like 80% of fiction is nonfiction is ghostwritten. And the way I always describe it to people is, if the book was authored by someone whose profession is not writing, it was most likely ghostwritten. And people can accept that, I find, in relation to football players and singers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then they seem to think that there's a curve where but surely someone who's really successful because of something to do with their intellect, or a political leader, or a professor, their book they must have written. It's no, they also worked with a ghostwriter.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that even professors, I literally have worked with professors. I've helped professors with their books. This is the thing. I've literally read their papers, and they're very smart people.
And by the way, I don't mean academic ghostwriting. I know that's a separate thing. That's
totally separate thing.
That's not.
But I've worked with professors who want to ghostwrite a how-to or a memoir. They've written, not they ghostwrite, they've written. As a developmental editor, I've worked with a lot of professors, a lot of people in academia who have written books, and I'm telling you, the writing is not great. Okay. It's not, it's maybe better than an app, maybe it's better than your average person, but sometimes not, because sometimes it's so highfalutin that it's most people will not be able to understand this at all. And unless the book's for another academic audience, you've got to change the vernacular. You got to change the tone, you got to change the style. So no, it's that's the thing. You can't, if every professor produced their own book and didn't have an editor even look at it. Okay. I'm talking about heavily editing, not let alone ghostwriting. People wouldn't be reading the books.
No, and it's why philosophy is generally hard to read. I'm talking stuff that was written in the 19th century, and because it was not ghostwritten, and it probably should have been. And oftentimes, what makes it difficult is this person is taking the thinking to the absolute limit, and they're at a level that is literally expanding human consciousness, but they are unable to then write at a level where they communicate those thoughts.
Well,
and not everyone is that. There's some philosophers where their brilliance is in the clarity of their writing, but
a lot of times what's happening is that as people are writing, they are unpacking and understanding something for the first time as they're writing it. So even me as a writer, as a fiction writer, I write. I mean, I'm a professional writer, but what I'm going to create for myself, because I'm describing scenes, describing scenarios, describing character development kind of as it's happening, as I'm writing it, I can't edit it and synthesize it as a ghostwriter would.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you need, because the ghostwriter is another filter. It's like the author is doing that initial work on the interview. And then your brains are already working as an editor. You just can't see it. But all that's happening, and we basically are kind of giving it an initial plane before they even see it. Which, if you write your own stuff, you can't do that.
No, it's hard.
Yeah, I heard that. So speaking of philosophy books, why they're not, why they're harder to read. So this is such a good point just about editing in general. So J.K. Rowling, she wrote all of her books. She did not ghostwrite the books, but had books ghostwritten. But the second book that she wrote, for the Harry Potter series, The Prisoner of Azkaban, that book, because of the wild success of the first one, she got a little full of herself. And basically he was like, I don't need editing. I'm not going to edit the second one. Oh, yeah.
Know that.
Yeah,
Whoa.
the second one is like obvious. It's like the worst fun of the whole series. The book is slow. There's
Yeah.
so much that should have been cut out of it. It's it's not developed as well. Yeah, and then learned her lesson, and then the third one went back to editors. That's what I mean. This is one of the biggest fiction authors ever, and even she needs editing. I will say this though about that. Okay, critique. Okay, so and they have something to say about writing. So typically, if somebody is reading something, and I can't remember where I learned this, but it stuck with me. If you're reading something, it's like with beta readers, people who are reading your book to give you feedback. If they're reading something and they have a problem, okay, like something isn't working for them, right? They're like, I don't know, character A, this doesn't make sense that they would do this with character B. They're usually right, okay?
Yeah.
They're usually right about something being wrong with that specific area. Now, where I'm agreeing with you is now they'll also try to tell you how to fix it. That's where they're usually wrong. Okay. Like they don't know how to fix it. They know that there's something wrong. Like their instincts, their gut, their feeling, the flow is off because they stopped and they made a comment about it. Right. We ideally, we don't want people to stop. We want people to keep reading, keep reading, keep reading. So if they stop, there's a problem. But right, their opinions on how to fix it, and usually
no, that and in that sense, I think it's like any other professional craft where, I mean, for you to describe what you want done is different from telling someone exactly how to do it, where you're going to get lost quickly. One thing I wanted to kind of circle back to, you and I, before we started recording, we were talking about how, yes, there's a balance you can achieve where ghostwriting can really fund interesting and rewarding side projects, but at the same time, like it's still a day job and it's still time consuming. And I struggle with that same balance, but I don't know about you. I find that the per hour to hour, minute to minute satisfaction of what I'm doing in any given moment of my day as a ghostwriter is just like so much more satisfying than anything else I could be doing. There seems to just be a very low or high, I forget how ratios work. Anyway, the ratio of like inane nonsense that you have to put up with and the joy of the craft seems to be a really healthy one. I can't remember the last time I worked with someone who was treating me like hired help, or not to say that doesn't happen. The way I've described it before, hearing people's stories about red flags in ghost or projects that I had one project that wasn't just I had to climb over red flags to get this project, to use an analogy that a fellow ghost used. And I should have known better. The project fell apart. It was catastrophic, but it was like, that never happens in copywriting or whatever. Like at least there's a potential for something interesting, even if it's bad interesting and it's like type 2 fun. I don't know. Anyway, what are your thoughts on all that? Like what is it? What's that balance look like in your work?
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm the type of person who is very go, go, go. I put a lot on my plate. I say yes to a lot of opportunities. So for me, ghostwriting in terms of balance, ghostwriting supports just my lifestyle, right? So I have, like I said, I have the horse. I mean, she's expensive. So that's a nice thing about ghostwriting is that it gives me the freedom to be able to enjoy her. I can go enjoy her at the barn whenever I'd like to. But I also try, quite frankly, like for me, everybody's different. Okay. And I have found that I work best actually with more structure. So even though ghostwriting does give me the freedom to go gallivant about town whenever I want, I actually don't really do that. So I actually really try to work like 9 to 5.
Yes.
Day through Friday, because I'm trying to maintain cadences of deliverables, but I'm working with more than one author at a time too. Okay. So a lot of people, you can sell 2 books a year and be totally fine for all the time. You know what I like? That could be like enough money forever and it's fine. And 2 books a year is so much freedom and so much time. It's like 1 book every 6 months. The amount of time that you have to spend every day is pretty minimal if you have one project. Okay. So like, and it's totally doable. That's what's so beautiful about this. If you build it up and you get to a point where you have enough experience to charge $50,000 minimum for a book, fantastic. My lifestyle, I live in LA. I live in LA. I'm a horse. I'm single. I live by myself. Like I 2 projects a year is not enough to support my lifestyle here. So I take on more projects than that, which is again fun because each project takes a certain number of hours a week, yada, yada. But in order to make all those deliverables and do a chapter a week like I like to do, I got to do it because it's going to take me, a chapter a week for one author, but I'm doing that for 4.
Yeah.
So that means I need to dedicate Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Each one of those days, I have to be able to dedicate to writing content. So that's the thing. As ghostwriters, you've got to bake in time. If you're going to take on multiple projects like me, if you want to be able to earn hundreds of thousands of dollars a year ghostwriting, okay, which is totally possible, but you have to be very diligent about your time. Because you have to make sure that you're giving yourself, it takes me a day to write a chapter. It takes about 5 hours. Okay. So that's a day because I usually will have a call. That's the thing. You're usually calling your authors too. So if you want to prioritize, or if you want to be able to take on this many projects, you have to be able to prioritize, but also be very, very diligent. So 4 projects, if I'm ghostwriting 4 projects, that gives me 1 day a week to either catch up, work on other things, putz around. Do you know what I mean? But that's how I do it, is that I'm very systematic with it. And because of that, but I'm at the barn in the mornings. I'm at the barn from 7:30 to 8:30. I come here, I shower, I get ready, I work, I do my thing, and then I have dinner, and then I can work on music at night, you see. So that's how I mix out the hobbies of like, otherwise, when would I do music production?
Right.
Or when I do deep practice, right? It's like, but again, but I do believe that every ghostwriter, you don't have to do it every single day, but every ghostwriter needs this discipline because you have to be able to sit down and make a deliverable. And if you can't do that, like you said, there's a promise of a deliverable. If you don't do it my method wise, and you're deciding, okay, I'm going to take 6 months on the back end to write this book. What if something happens? Mm-hmm. Something happens to you. What if you have like a writer's block and you just like can't focus? Like, what if the content, you didn't realize it because in the moment you're talking and it's great, and a conversation verbally can be great without realizing that you didn't really say much at all. Yeah. And then you go back and you've got 10 interviews of content and you can't even write anything because, you know what I mean? There's like a lot of stuff that can happen with that type of a schedule. So that's why I just push, just keep producing.
Get after it.
Yeah. You can. I mean, if you can, yeah.
No, that it reminds me of, there's this old like Steve McQueen line where he said that he got into acting to escape the 9 to 5 and ended up working 70-hour weeks.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, if I were working on my own projects or when I have a surplus of projects, because sometimes that happens. So this is the other thing about freelancing. Okay. Is that, especially again, because I live by myself, I am my own source of income. There's nothing else steady about this, right? I'm the steady one. So because of that, I have to also account for the fact that there are sometimes going to be authors that ghost me. Pun intended. There's going to be some that ghost me for 6 months. Like we talked about at the very beginning of the call, there are going to just be some that do that. So I have to overpad my work, like basically my project load to compensate for authors that do that. Because when they're doing that, they're not paying me. They're not delivering things. They're not. So yeah. But last thing I'll say about this, I highly recommend actually putting people on a monthly plan. So if you sell a book for 50 grand, and I highly recommend doing a payment plan over 12 months, because then you have a steady, like six, or like, it's like $4,000 a month or something like that, 3,300 bucks a month. It's steady. And then you can kind of, it's just easier to, maybe you might finish the book earlier than a year, but then that's great. That means you're sitting on 3 months of time. You didn't even do work and you're still getting checks.
That's that's what I do. I do usually 20% up front and then monthly. And it depends. Like if it's a book where it, for whatever reason, needs to be rushed and we're doing 4 months, great. I'll have 4, lucrative months. But a year is also wonderful because then like you said, it's a check in the mail every month. What would be your advice to someone who, like, I'm picturing myself a few years ago? I think there's a lot of different paths to becoming a ghost, but let's say you've got the writing skills, you have got all the skills we mentioned that would go into ghostwriting, and you'd be great at it. And you've just heard this podcast, and Lisa's talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, and horses, and like all that sounds like
luxury life.
Yeah. For someone who likes the sounds of that, has the skills to back it up, what is the best way to get started?
Well, the best way I got started, this is hard, okay? Because I think this is the best way, but maybe it's not the best way because it's probably not the easiest way. The best way is to write your own book, okay? Or be a part of a book project. So for you wrote your dad's book.
Yep.
So I wrote a science fiction trilogy because what that demonstrates is your ability to write a book from beginning to end. Now, when I first got started in it, I used that to leverage. Then I started ghostwriting. The books that I was ghostwriting were financial books, and I was getting paid a fraction. Like I was getting paid like 10% of what I earn now per book. Okay. So it was a very, very small amount. I had to hustle, and I had to make, it was like you said, it was poverty level, making enough money to be as a writer. I mean, I had other jobs. It wasn't my only job. But the best way really is to write your own book, because then you might be able to get a $5,000, $10,000 ghostwriting gig as a first-time ghostwriter. Because in order to do, it's just kind of like building up your resume. It's similar to maybe an actor who gets a guest star on a show, and then maybe their guest star has 3 episodes, and then maybe they book maybe they're in like one season of a series, and then they get their own series. It's like you have to build up. Nobody's going to hire you as a ghostwriter for $50,000 and you've never even written a book, right?
Yes.
Why would you do that? We're selling huge. These are very big ticket items. These are as a car. So the sale alone takes like 6 months, or it takes like 6 weeks to close, right? Regardless of that, like why would I close on you if you've never even written a book? So the first thing you got to do is write your own. I would suggest writing your own book. So, and it can be about anything. I would suggest writing your own book, and then get on. I did Upwork. So
that's right. You were telling me that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found my first client, my first regular client, who hired me for 1 book, and then 2, and then like 6.
Was that fiction or?
A very small amount, which is why it was unsustainable. After 6, I had to stop because I wasn't making enough money, and I had to basically, at that point though, I had 8 books under my name that I'd ghostwritten. So this is the thing, but building that took a year.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I'm saying. For anybody getting started, you got to start, just like anything, you got to start chipping away now. If you don't start now, you're going to start a year from now, you're going to just be a year later behind in the process, but it is going to take time. So you've got to understand that it's kind of like a stalk of bamboo. So bamboo is interesting. You put a seed of bamboo in the ground you water it for 5 years. You don't see anything. You see nothing. You see no bamboo at all. And then in year 5 to 6, that thing shoots up like 20 feet. Okay. So that's similar to ghostwriting. Like not years 1 through 5 necessarily, but in the very beginning, you're not going to see a lot because it's going to be similar to low income writing.
Yeah. It's
poverty level writing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's such a good, wow. First of all, I didn't know that about bamboo, but that's such a good, it's the overnight success that takes a decade, right? And
Exactly. It's like, that's the thing. It's not, nothing really is an overnight success. Even like people that become like mega stars in Hollywood that like we didn't know about before, they've had huge resumes of careers. Like the thing is that these are people don't just get to where they are. People aren't really discovered, you know, like they have to be, this just doesn't really happen. So yeah, but with ghostwriting, the same thing. You got to start small, start your own books first, and then go to Upwork and try to get smaller books. Um, or start talking to people. This is what I would suggest too, if you're starting out. So just start talking to people and telling people that you ghostwrite. So be like, listen, I wrote my own books and I'm really looking to get into ghostwriting and I've taken a lot of trainings on it. I've learned how to do it. And I would love to help somebody write their ghostwrite their book. And I would do it for, a fraction of the cost to help, so I could get started. And you know what I mean? It's like, you got to kind of put yourself out there. You got to also be okay with hearing no.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a big ask. You don't have any experience. But yeah, just start chipping away now. And one book, then you can, once you write one, the next one you write, you can charge. If you've written one, you can charge 15,000 for the next one. You really to like do what I did. You don't need to write like 8.
Yeah, that's you went on hard mode there, but then you have your 8 books. So like,
yes, I mean, that's the thing. And then that's how I was able to get my next big gig, which was with Scribe. So Scribe was the big training gig, and that was really what catapulted my career. Because I was able to get paid an adequate rate for my work. So it was like, it was livable. It was more than livable. And then all of a sudden, yeah. Now I have like 30. Yeah. So
you've written 30 books at this point?
Yeah, there's like 30. Yeah, it's kind of nuts when I look at my list of all of them.
That's wild. Do you have a copy of every book you've written?
Almost. There were a bunch that came out last year that I still need to order. I haven't done that. But yeah, pretty much. It's yeah, it's great. It's fun. Like you said, it's for the curious. You know what I mean? It's for curious-minded people. Like I don't think I could ever stop learning. That's why I love music so much. I'm learning so many new skills. Like it's like, and this is like, my brain just has to learn. If it's not learning, I don't know. I guess that's probably when I'll.
It's so fun. Yeah, you're getting paid to be interested and curious. And the thing I find that's really interesting, and this is probably like where I want to be mindful of your time, and this is probably a separate episode, but I feel one thing I've heard from a number of people have written about this, it's not my original idea, but I've noticed it in my own life, is that you're essentially getting paid to network as well. Like you're going to talk to people who would never respond. I mean, I have never not gotten a reply to an email where the subject line is, I want to talk to you for a book, or I want to include you in a book. It's amazing who you can talk to when a book is the purpose of reaching out.
And I highly recommend doing that via LinkedIn too. So one of the things I think is like a really good tool for ghostwriters is LinkedIn. And I started trying to do some stuff on Instagram, and I like to try things and learn. Okay. And Instagram is not the place to market your services because, most people on Instagram are not going to pay, again, $50,000 for something they see advertised on Instagram. I mean, that's just not the market for that. The things you buy on Instagram are like $30 that you see that gets shipped to you within like 6 months. You know what I mean? It's like that type of stuff that you buy on Instagram, not like books. But LinkedIn is the professional network. LinkedIn is where people are looking for ghostwriters. So I highly recommend going to LinkedIn, looking at your network, doing what you said, but also change your headline. Okay. And pick something specific. Like I would say, oh, this is good. I would say this is probably some good advice too. Okay. So if you're wanting to get into ghostwriting, you have a background. Let's say you're in marketing. Say you're a marketer. You're like, I've spent 10 years of my life in marketing, but I want to get into ghostwriting. Okay. Because most people who want to get into ghostwriting, they've done something else with their life. Like they have an expertise in something. So go right on to LinkedIn. So let's say I'm a marketer. I'm a ghostwriter. I help marketing professionals write best-selling books. Okay, maybe don't say best-selling if you're not doing that yet, but like I help marketing professionals write books. Put that in your headline. You'll be able to do, you'll get responses. Now, again, don't do this until you've actually written a book. All right. I think that's my first thing. Like, you want to be a ghostwriter, you need to be able to write a book. So write your own book first. That's step number one. But once you've done that, go to LinkedIn, reach out to people. I'm getting into ghostwriting. You would make an excellent book. Like, if you wanted to ghostwrite, you have an excellent story for a book. I would love to help you out. I'm just getting started. I'll give you a great deal.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway.
No, that's great advice.
A lot this morning. You're asking really great questions.
No, this is excellent. Thank you. And I think it's one of those things where I really want to try to capture I had conversations with you when I was getting started that put me on the right path, and I'm hoping to replicate that here, and I'm hoping someone listens to this and gets something out of it that they can use, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
Lisa, where can listeners find you, and what's on the horizon that you're excited about?
Yeah. So where can people find me? They can go to my website, lisacaskeyauthor.com. That's the best place to see basically not a complete repertoire of my ghostwriting work, but you'll see a testimonial. It'll be a wall of love of people I've worked with. I'll list my services if that's something that, if you're listening and you're interested in ghostwriting services, you could do that. If you're a ghostwriter and you're interested in just advice, you can shoot me a message there. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's a good way too. So I'm at Lisa Marie Caskey. So my name at Instagram, and you can message me there if you're looking for help or advice with ghostwriting. But yeah, those would be the two places. And then my books are on Amazon if you want to read my books, but you can also find links to that stuff on my website.
Lisa, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise. Yeah, let's do this again soon. I'm putting together, we're going to take a little bit of a summer break, but I'm putting together some bonus episodes on really specific topics. And I'd love to hear what you think of potential subjects. And if you want to come back.
Yeah, let me know. Of course. Always let me know. Anytime you need some.
There's one that's kind of quietly in the works. I'm going to get some anonymous tips for it, but we're going to do an episode on red flags, like project red flags, client red flags.
That's smart to do. Yeah, no, because that's a big thing. Yeah, trust your instinct. Yeah, I love that one. Because that's you'll save yourself so much time and energy on the back end if you can learn that quickly.
Oh my God. And luckily, I find people who are truly unhinged tend to lead with the crazy. So you'll know from the email.
Yeah. 100%. Trust your instincts. You know if people are put together or not.
Yeah. There's a lot of trauma dumping happens in my inbox.
Well, and that's the thing too about ghostwriting is that's why I highly, highly recommend having a retainer if it's been a year and they're still working, because you are holding emotional space for the author. Because it is there's a lot of release work that happens during these calls.
Oh yeah.
And calls. And even if it's not a memoir, I learned so much about these authors that it's I have to hold space for that.
Yeah, it's unlicensed therapy, I think.
It is. And it comes at a premium, honey. You know what I mean? Like, I can't just, you know what I mean? Like, you want me to listen to your thoughts and feelings and write them down in a book that you want to publish? Like, yeah, you got to pay me for that, you know? You got to pay me a good amount. Think about this. How much would you charge? How much does a therapist get charged per hour?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How much does a psychiatrist get charged an hour? And we're doing more than that. Not to diminish their professions at all. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like we're listening as if we were a therapist, and then we also need to produce content.
Then synthesize, a piece of art,
so it's
basically.
Yeah. So, of course you need to.
This is such a random side question, but in relation to what you were saying earlier about being kind of open and approachable. That's there was that one show Tim Roth was in it. I forget the name of it, but he was this human lie detector because he was an expert in micro facial expressions and whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel if there was some study that came out that was the key to certain people don't react when they're doing an interview, and that's why they're able to give interviews. Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. What do you think? There's like some weird factor where some people just are better at holding that space than others for reasons that maybe they don't even kind of understand or have control over?
I mean, definitely. I think that there's a level of empathy that's required to be a ghostwriter. I think that you have to, like you said, you have to be able to sympathize. You have to be able to listen without judgment, which you can do that in a vacuum for only so long. So when it gets to a point, there's going to be an emotive response from the ghostwriter. And so it's successful when it's from an empathetic perspective. So I do think that because we're empaths mostly, we have more capability to hold space for that. So I think it's just because we've been used to doing it for our whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I don't think someone who has, and again, there's nothing, people are different, but somebody who's less sympathetic to the plight of others, who's more self-focused, maybe less community driven, they're probably not going to be as good of a fit for a role like this, because it does require selflessness. It requires a lack of ego. You have to let go of all of that because you have to put yourself in the shoes of your author, but then also receive critical feedback because you're delivering a product. So you have to be okay with them not liking what you put out.
It's so weird, isn't it? Lisa, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Of course, Mike. Anytime. Yeah, let me know when you want to meet again. If you have any questions, if you need anything else, I'm here.
Good stuff.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
If you have an epic story, I'd love to hear it. You can find me at dailyprose.com or on LinkedIn. My links and Lisa's are in the show notes. Thanks for listening.